Now we are learning the Dvar Malchut. The Dvar Malchut are the royal words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he spoke in 1991 on Shabbat Nachamu. Shabbat Nachamu. This coming Shabbat, and the word Nachamu means comfort, and it comes from the Haftorah. Remember, we learned I put it up. I found out last year I made a class in Nachamu, so I put it up. You can look and see. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. It says, be comforted, my people. And it's just all these wonderful things about how much God loves the Jews and how he's going to gather them all up and that he's going to forgive them and that what they did was forgivable and don't worry about it, just made a few mistakes. And he's going to gather the Jews together, Hoshiva Shavtein Karishona, and I'll gather all the Jews together and all the leaders as they were originally, and etc. He's going to, okay. So the Rebbe said that, and the word Nachamu is repeated twice because it's implying that God is not just going to comfort us two times, but he's going to comfort us doubled and redoubled, which that word doubled and redoubled means infinite. Because if you take a number and you double it and redouble it and constantly redouble it, there's no end to it. Says the Rebbe that this, of course, does not seem to be logical. And in fact, it's not logical. It'll be revealed a level of godliness which is totally above logic. The source of logic, the creator of logic, right? God is the creator of intellect. He's the creator of logic. He's the creator of everything. And it says that the logic, for instance, the power of intellect of the angels is infinitely greater than ours. And the angels is nothing. That's also a creation. That's also limited. So our awareness of what reality is will be enhanced, doubled and redoubled and redoubled. Somehow or other, this is going to be caused by our suffering now. Our suffering now. An awareness of God that's infinitely higher than going to heaven. Going to heaven, going to all these levels. Somehow or other, that's no. So I'm sure if you go to a person and say, listen, you want an infinite level of pleasure of God that's above all the heavens. How would you like that? I said, well, that's pretty good. Yeah, sure. Why I would like that. Okay, but all we have to do is just cut off your leg. I said, listen, maybe talk to somebody else. Maybe, listen, let's get practical about this. Cut off your leg, we'll give you $100 million. What do you say? I don't know. Let me think about it. You're not going to say yes immediately, right? You go and ask people, listen, $100 million, I can give a lot of charity, and they'll put, a prosthetic leg, how long you got to live, the 20 years. So you just have a prosthetic leg, 100 million. Think about it. Okay, you know what? 100 million, you sure? You put it in my bank, put it in the bank first. I don't want to, yeah, we'll take care of all your medical bills and everything like that. Would you do it? Says yes. Okay, what about another 100 million to cut off your other leg? So listen, just do me a favor. Maybe just leave me alone. Just go and talk to somebody else. No, really, seriously, I got a better idea. Listen to this. You'll get all the pleasures of heaven. All we have to do is just kill 6 million of your people. What is it? I said, listen, you're nuts. You get out, leave me alone. You have no idea what type of, all of them will get this tremendous pleasure above. Says, please, listen, talk to somebody. You don't call me, I'll call you. Okay, hang up. There's no way that anyone could dream that suffering would bring some sort of a big reward, right? There's no. But the Rebbe is saying that we don't want any more suffering. It's enough. We're not offered it. But the suffering already happened. It already happened. And the fact of the matter is God didn't ask us any questions, because if he would have, we wouldn't have done it. And somehow or other, we're going to see, which, I have to admit, I've got serious doubts about this whole business because it's incomprehensible. But the Rebbe says it, so it must be true. It must be true. So somehow or other, there's going to be some sort of reward. I don't, I don't want to imply that I agree with this whole business. That all the suffering, it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile, and I'm sure that the Rebbe for sure doesn't agree with it, that all the suffering is worthwhile, because there's no explanation for suffering. But it already happened. And we're going to see somehow or other that it was not only was worthwhile, if we would have gotten any glimpse of what the reward is, we would have done it. But the problem is that the reason that things hurt so bad and the torture is so bad is because we have no idea what benefit there is. We have no idea. If we would know what the benefit was, then it wouldn't be torture. And for some reason, torture, listen, the Jewish people were born in Egypt. We learned this a couple of weeks ago. Judaism began in Egypt. We didn't do anything bad. We were born in slavery. There was no punishment. There was no purifications. There was no logic behind the whole business. It says it was worth it to go out and get the Torah. Oh, really? Yes, really? You sure? It was really worth it? You have any idea what the suffering is? God says, I suffered along with them. Don't worry. Because I also suffered. Okay. Anyway, the Rebbe is not trying to explain suffering, and he's not trying to justify suffering. But he is saying that the fact of the matter is that God is infinitely good, and that somehow or other we're going to see that all the suffering that happened was really something infinitely good, that we can have absolutely no, even to say that we can't understand it is an insult. Can't understand it means like, my mind compared to Einstein's mind. So I can't understand what, but he's got a mind, it's just his mind is greater than my mind. Let's take an example, right? But things which are incomprehensible, you can't say, we don't understand it. It's not in the category of understanding, right? Like the color blue, you can't hear it. It's just not in the category. Well, so I'll make it more blue, then maybe you can hear it. But it's not same thing. Reality, especially the real it's going to be revealed, is income. Okay, so it says that's what it means. It's going to be doubled and redoubled and redoubled reality that's going to be infinitely real and infinitely good. Because the message of Judaism is that this world is infinitely good and human beings are infinitely good. They're made in the image of God. What this means, we don't, that's why we're in exile. Alder says similarly, we can explain why Moses wanted to come to the land of Israel in the beginning of Parshat Et Hanan. In this week's Torah portion, we talked about this many times. At Hanan, Moses prayed 515 prayers to come to the land of Israel, and God refused. One of the reasons Shalonit Kaimo that was not fulfilled. Let me see. Let me get this. One of the reasons that was not fulfilled Moses' request, 515 requests to come to the land of Israel, like it says, Vayomer Hashem Elai, that God said to me. Moses is repeating, Moshe is repeating to the Jewish people, Lo ta'avor et Yarden hazeh, you're not going to go across the Jordan River. But Tzaves Yeshua, that I should command Joshua, and he's going to take the Jewish people into the land of Israel. Av she'echnisu le'eretz al yedei Moshe, even though that if Moses would have taken the Jews into Egypt, it would have been in an infinitely higher way than going into the land of by means of Joshua, which Joshua had to fight all sorts of battles. Joshua had to defeat enemies. Joshua in the end didn't build the temple, right? Joshua, he came into the land of Israel, there was only just a tabernacle. And it lasted that way for 440 years, the tabernacle, until came along David, King David. If Moshe would have taken the Jews into Egypt, if Moshe would have taken the Jews into Israel, then it would have been a geula nitzchis, it would have been an eternal, permanent redemption, that there's no exile after it. The Jews would not have sinned, there would have been a temple and would have lasted forever. Why? If so, why was it that Moses requests to take the Jews into Israel? Why am I saying this? Taking the Jews into Israel was refused. Why? Because there's something better, there's an advantage to bringing them in by means of Joshua. What could possibly be better bringing the Jews by means of Joshua. The explanation is by conquering and dividing the land of Israel by means of Joshua, that it was totally by us. We did it. Like it was dividing, conquering the land of Israel and dividing it up. It took a long time. 7 years it took to conquer the land of Israel and 7 years to divide it up. So God gave the land of Israel to the Jews. He gave it to Abraham, but he wanted them to fight for it. And if Moses would have taken the Jews into Egypt, into Israel, if Moses would have taken, I guess maybe because I identify Moshe with Israel, trying to psychologically explain this thing. Moshe is identified with Egypt because in the end he didn't go into Israel. He didn't go into Israel. So maybe that's the reason. Anyway, it's a mistake. Okay. If Moshe would have taken the Jews into Israel, there wouldn't have been any battles. There wouldn't have been any war. It took the Jews 7 years to divide up, 7 years to conquer the land, and 7 more to actually divide it up and settle it. And afterwards, Nisharu Chalakim Me'eretz Yisrael, there were still parts of the land of Israel that weren't conquered. Like it says in the book of Shoftim, in the book of Judges. That after Joshua died, and the Jewish people asked from God, said, who is going to take us, who is going to conquer the land of Canaan, to divide them up? And God said, Yehuda Yaleh, the tribe of Judah will come. But Yomer Yehuda LeShimon, Shimon said, his brother, let's go and we'll start to fight against the Canaanim. And come, I'll go with you and I'll be with your portion. The Jewish people had to fight battles because the whole, why that's better than if Moses would have taken them. If Moses would have taken them, there wouldn't have been any battles. God would have done the whole business. No, God wanted that there should be battles. Why? Kivan should be by refining the lower world, had to be by means of service, serving God, like we just learned in the mimer, changing yourself, changing the world. It takes a long time. And even more, in other words, the change which occurs from below to above is more internal and permanent in an internal, personal way than if God would have done the whole thing. But and even more, it's almost the same thing as, let's say, somebody is the champion boxer, and people sign up to fight against him, and they just look at him in the ring and they leave. So he wins all these belts and all these prizes and everything, but he doesn't fight against anybody. He would rather have it, and so the crowd certainly would rather have it. Eventually, it doesn't become interesting anymore, right? Maybe we'll wait a few years. Maybe when he's 70 years old, 80 years old, maybe he was 98 years old. Still, people look at him and they just don't want to come, right? They'll go into this, they'll take one look and they leave. So good, he wins everything, but there's no contest, and he doesn't feel a sense of accomplishment. And the belts mean nothing to him, right? It's just that the same thing. I just brought this as an example. I mean, this is not the Rebbe's example. I just thought of the example. And the same thing is, if Moses would have taken the Jews into Israel, then there wouldn't have been any battles. The non-Jews would have seen, they would have run away. And so they would have won, they would have defeated them, but there wouldn't be the same feeling of accomplishment. And not only that, and there wouldn't be any real change. Everybody would just said, let's leave. So it ends up that the Jews didn't really ever show God's power. They didn't show God's power. They didn't show their loyalty to God. People would rather see a challenger come in and at least challenge the champion, so it would be interesting. And then if the champion won and the guy was really strong, he knocked the champion down a couple of times and he got up, then he would appreciate his belt. The same thing, the Jewish people would appreciate the land of Israel more. Says that's one of the reasons why the Jewish people were exiled. Even more, after the Jewish people fought and they redeemed the land of Israel the first time, So God destroyed the temples and he exiled the Jews among the nations of the world, not only the first time in Babylon for 70 years, but after the destruction of the second temple was for almost 2,000 years. Korov Alpayim Shana. Why? For the same reason, that the intention in this was in order that the Jews should refine the world by means of their work. Result, like the rabbis say, Lo Higla Kodesh Baruch Hu et Yisrael, the Jewish people were only dispersed among the nations, Ela Kadei Shiatosvu Aleim Gerim, to add to them what's called converts. It's not talking about human converts. That's also true, but that's not the main point. That's definitely for sure not the main point. The main point is sparks of holiness which are found in the exile. I mean, just for your information, I'm sure everybody knows this or at least heard from it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe brought it a lot of times. A lot of times, a convert is a person that always was a Jew internally, but he wasn't a Jew externally. Internally, he had a soul of a Jew, but his body was not a vessel for that. It couldn't express it. It's like taking television tubes and putting it into a radio. It just wasn't the proper vessel. So you have to change the vessel. Change the vessel. And then the person goes, well, the fact is everything in the world is not that way. Everything in the world is made from God, by God, from God, and for God. Everything in the world is as a spark of godliness, a soul of godliness, a purpose of godliness in it. And the purpose of the Jewish people is to be in the world and use the world for what God wants. That reveals that spark. Just like a convert, his inner soul is revealed. The Jewish people are here to reveal the inner purpose of everything in the world. In other words, to use it to serve God with. Huh? You do it like it's known, to make from outside of the land of Israel. It says that in the future, the land of Israel will spread out all over the world. And by means of our deeds, all the time of exile, refining this world and coming into the land of Israel, the Gula Miti Tashlema, when the Jews have finished refining the world and Moshiach gathers them all to the land of Israel, then they will be coming to the land of Israel in a complete way with both things, Moshe from above to below and Joshua from below to above. Gam Yachad, there'll be a Gula Nitzchis, an eternal redemption. Sheina Charel Galus, that there's no afterwards any exile afterwards. That's what we just finished learning in Lakuti Torah. Lakuti Torah, that there has to be what we call Kabbalat Ol. In other words, serving God in a place where there's no reason to serve God other than pure faith, pure, what do you call it? There's a word for this, resolution. Huh? Pure resolution. I make that decision. I'm going to serve God no matter what. Oh yeah, let's see. That's what Abraham was. What was Abraham? God put Abraham through 10 tests. Oh, one second. I see what's going on here. My window is open. There we go. God said, I will serve you, God, no matter what. God said, oh yeah? Let's see. Leave your land and go to another great land, and there you're going to be a great nation and a great people. Abraham said, no problem. Oh, that I'm going to do in a second. I'm going to be a great nation. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be good. I'll go. And he went, and there was a famine. There was nothing to eat. He didn't have a great name. He didn't have anything. And then his wife was kidnapped from him. Abraham should have said, hey, what? Okay, I get the point. Enough. No, Abraham said, okay, God, whatever you want. Anything you want, I'll do it. I'll do it. But I reneged on my promises. That's your business. My business is to do what you want. Well, you want to renege your promises? That's what you want. Whatever you want, God. But wherever you are, wherever I am, no matter what, I'm serving you. No logic, no reason. I have a lot of good reasons not to serve you. I'm forgetting about all those. That's what's called serving God from the tachton, from this low physical world where there's no reason to serve God anymore, except pure, how do you call it? Stubbornness, stiff-necked nation. I made a resolution to do good, to do what God wants. Nothing's going to dissuade me. But it means you're going to be in bad situations. That's what the Jews are. That's what began when Joshua took the Jews into Israel. He said, you're going to have to fight. You said, okay, no problem. When we say move, and now it's understood, it stressed the greatness, the importance of going into the land of Israel, and the land of Israel has to be complete. Moshe wasn't by means of Moses. Why? Because it should have the advantage, the quality of we did it, we purified the world. When we do that, then it's a way as unlimited. And that's the double comfort that we talked about before. Infinite, infinite, times infinite. Infinite to the infinite power. Nachamu b'kiflayim. I comfort you and I recomfort you and I recomfort you and recomfort you. Like it says, Shemetzada Heder Hagvala, because there's no limit. So therefore, that's the completion of everything that there is. Now, a normal person could say, come on, what do you, the land of Israel has boundaries. That's the whole thing of the land of Israel. Everything has boundaries. People have boundaries. The Torah has boundaries. The commandments have boundaries. It says, yeah, but you're serving God. And God has no boundaries. And the land of Israel is God's land. And the commandments are God's commandments. And the Jews are God's people. Which means that's unifying unlimited and limited. Is that possible? No, it's impossible. But it happened. The impossible occurred. That was what was in the Holy Temple. That's what happened in the Holy Temple. It said that in the Holy of Holies, the ark was there. It had very precise measurements. And nevertheless, when they lowered people down to measure it, it didn't have any measurements at all. Right? The room was, let's say, 20 amas wide, and the ark was 2.5 amas. When they measured from one end of the ark to the wall, it was 10 amas. From the other end, it was 10 amas. So it ended up the ark didn't take up any place. It didn't take up any room. So if it didn't take up any room, then that means it didn't have any measure. So that disqualifies it. But it was there. In fact, the reason that it didn't have any measurements was because it was there. So does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense. And that's where the Jewish people are. The Jewish people are to reveal the infiniteness of every detail of the world, every instant of time. And we're doing it right now. We just don't feel it. That's why it says, it's better one good deed in this world, right? One moment of doing good in this world is worth all of the upper worlds, because all of the upper worlds are lacking something big, and that is now you can't do commandments, you can't make decisions, and you can't challenge your own nature in the upper worlds. Only you can do that only in this world, and the only time you can do it is now. You can't do it yesterday, you can't do it tomorrow. And that Moshiach is going to reveal the infiniteness of now. When we do what God wants right now, we'll reveal, it'll be revealed. That's where this infinite of God and the finite of this world meets when we do a commandment. That'll be a completion in time, infinite time and infinite space. Lorak Eretz Sheva almost, therefore the land of Israel will not just be 7, Ela but Gam Eretz Kini Kinizi Kadmoni. It'll be also the other 3 nations that God promised to Abraham. He promised him 10 nations, and we only got 7. Joshua. It'll be the land of the 10 nations. Both in Kol Yoshveh, that all the Jews will settle on it. All of the Jews, Shekol B'nai Israel, all of the Jewish people, including all the Jewish people that died in all the previous generations. The Jews that died in Egypt, the Jews that died in the Holocaust, the Jews, Yoshvim B'Kol Eretz Israel, they will inhabit the whole entire land of Israel in a way that it will be set eternally forever and ever and ever. Now, a person can say to himself, I mean, come on, is this stuff really real? But if you take an example, a person that's an addict, I know I bring this too much actually, but what can you do? It's an example. I remember even when I was young, and before I became religious, before this, I was amazed that there was such a thing as hypnosis. I didn't really want to do it or to do it to others, but I was amazed there could be such a thing that a person would think and feel that he's something that he's not. But you can hypnotize a person. You are a chicken. You are a chicken. You have a beak. Right? You can't talk. All you can do is go over. Right? Are you a chicken? Right? And all of a sudden, the person becomes a chicken. He thinks he's a chicken. Right? He starts walking like a chicken, and hypnosis, and it's just all in the person's mind. Hypnosis. And then afterwards, I got a little bit older. I realized there's a thing called addiction. Addiction is a person. It's almost the same type of a thing. A person thinks he's something that he's not. Right? I have to, do X. I have to do Y. I have to, take drugs or get drunk or whatever it is. I have to do this. He thinks he's hypnotized himself into a false identity. Now, if you go and talk to one of these people, let's say a criminal, there's people who are criminals, right? I don't know if it's the same thing, but criminal, right? The same thing with people who are addicted, they lie. All addicts lie. All of them lie. They'll do anything to get, because they live in a world, a false world, and anything that denies them this world is like their enemy. So they're willing to do anything to trick and to lie and to cheat in order to get their little thing. So it's not to them a lie. The reality is this little reality. Well, the fact is that's where everybody is. And we're addicted to this world. We think that this world is all that there is. We think that there is, right? We think that there's no creator, there's no reality above this world. Some of the religions, they say that there's heaven, you can go to heavens. Maybe that's all the religion. There's heavens, but there's a creator to the whole business. Heavens are like an alternative to intense selfishness. This is another type of spiritual selfishness. But there's an alternative to thinking about me. There's a creator. It's like, an addicted person can't imagine how it can be that I'm not addicted. How can there be anything else except for what am I going to do? If I don't drink, what am I going to do? There's nothing. You can't do anything else. You can't imagine. The same thing, we can't imagine what's there going to be if there's going to be pure godliness revealed. Every second will be infinite. Every place will be infinitely meaningful, and godly people will be thankful that they're being created. Right? But the fact of the matter is, we can extrapolate a little bit from that the Rebbe likened it also to a dream. The King David like a dream. When you're in a dream, you think it's really real. You think that that's the only real reality. And that you can suddenly realize that what I thought it was real, but it really wasn't real. That's the point. It's not really real. The Rebbe once said that that's the reason why we sleep. Only because when we're asleep, we can't serve God. We can't do anything. Instead of making people live 120 years and spend 1/3 of it, let's say, or 1/4 of it sleeping, right? So take away 30 years and people only live 90 years and then without sleeping. What's the problem? It says, no, if you don't sleep, then you got a big problem. You don't experience sleeping and waking up. And when you're asleep, you think that it's really real. And when you wake up, you realize that it wasn't really real at all. In fact, sometimes when you're asleep, you get all excited. And wake up, you don't even know what you were excited about. You don't remember anything. Says the Rebbe, that's only telling us that maybe the state that we're in now is like a person that's asleep. And we get all excited about things that we think are real, and they're really not. And that the whole world is going to wake up. And that's what the Rebbe is talking about. That's the nachamu, the double the comfort of the Jewish people. And we're going to talk about this more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's do the Yom Yom. Mm-hmm. One minute, whatever. Here we go. Oh, here. This is powerful. This is the most powerful of all of in my estimation, of all of the Yom Yoms. Ready? Here we go. Listen to this. Listen to this. This is a real knockout Yom Yom. Here we go. 1 second.